What happens when the man who built his world on control suddenly loses it all, and the people he counted on the most choose a different path? Stay with me, because this story takes a turn you will not expect. And if you want more deep dives like this, hit subscribe right now and join the fastest growing channel uncovering the truth behind reality TV. Cody Brown built a life that looked unshakable from the outside. A carefully arranged world where he stood at the center and everything else revolved around his voice, his choices, and his expectations. For years, the image held steady. A large family, a strong presence, and a belief that loyalty would always flow in one direction, toward him. But beneath that surface, something quieter was happening, something that could not be controlled or directed. Because people grow, people change, and over time, they begin to see things differently, especially when they are no longer children living under the same rules that once defined their place in the family. And this is where the story truly begins. Not with a sudden explosion, but with a slow shift that built quietly in the background until it reached a point where it could no longer be ignored. Because the structure that once felt solid was starting to reveal its weaknesses, and the people within it were beginning to question what they had always accepted without hesitation. And at the center of that shift was a realization that would change everything. That authority without connection does not hold the same power as it once did, and that respect cannot be maintained through expectation alone. It must be reinforced through consistent actions over time. And this is something Cody did not fully recognize, because for him, the role of patriarch was something permanent, something that did not need to be re-earned or redefined. It simply existed because he believed it did. But the world around him was changing, and more importantly, the people closest to him were changing too. And that is where the tension began to build. Because what happens when the people you expect to follow your lead begin to form their own understanding of what leadership should look like? What happens when they start comparing what they have experienced with what they believe they deserve? And this is where the narrative takes a deeper turn. Because it is no longer about maintaining control, it becomes about confronting a reality that is very different from the one that was once imagined. And this is where Christine enters the picture, in a way that shifts everything. Because her decision to step away was not just about her own path. It created a ripple effect that extended to every part of the family dynamic. It introduced a new possibility, a different perspective, and a change that could not be undone.
Impact his relationship with his father, but also influence how the entire situation would be perceived moving forward. Because once one person steps outside of an expected role, it creates space for others to do the same. And that is where the tension deepens. Because it is no longer about a single decision. It becomes about a broader change in how relationships are defined and understood. And this is where the emotional weight of the story begins to take hold. Because it is not simply about disagreement, it is about identity, about roles that have been held for years being questioned and reevaluated, and about the realization that the things people once relied on may not hold the same meaning anymore. And that realization can be difficult to face, especially when it challenges something as deeply rooted as the idea of family structure and leadership. And as the story continues to unfold, the focus shifts from expectation to reality, from assumption to observation, and from control to adaptation. Because the truth is that change does not wait for permission. It happens gradually and then all at once. And when it reaches that point, it forces everyone involved to respond in one way or another. And for Cody, this was the moment where everything he believed to be certain began to feel uncertain. Because the loyalty he expected was no longer guaranteed. The authority he relied on was no longer unquestioned. And the role he had always identified with was no longer clearly defined. And that is where the suspense of this story truly builds. Because it raises a question that lingers beneath every moment. What happens when the foundation you have built your identity on begins to shift, and you are faced with the possibility that it may not hold the same weight it once did? And as this question continues to develop, the story moves toward a point where choices must be made, not just by one person, but by everyone involved. Choices that will determine how the next chapter unfolds, and whether the connections that remain can adapt to the changes that have already taken place, or whether they will continue to drift further apart as each individual moves forward in their own direction. And this is what keeps the narrative engaging,
because it is not confined to a single outcome. It is open, evolving, and shaped by the decisions that are still being made in real time. And as viewers follow along, they are not just watching a series of events, they are witnessing a transformation, one that reflects a broader truth about relationships, growth, and the complexities of change. And just when it seems like the situation has settled into a new pattern, another layer begins to emerge, adding depth and intensity to a story that continues to unfold in unexpected ways, and leaving one thought lingering in the background. As everything moves forward, this is only the beginning.
As the situation continued to unfold, the emotional stakes grew higher, and the quiet tension that had been building began to surface in more visible ways. Because what was once kept behind closed doors was now slowly entering the public space, where every reaction, every choice, and every interaction carried more weight than before. And this shift created a new kind of pressure, not just for Cody, but for everyone connected to the family. Because the narrative was no longer controlled. It was being shaped in real time by perception, by interpretation, and by the growing awareness of an audience that was paying close attention to every detail. And at the center of this evolving dynamic was a contrast that became impossible to ignore. A contrast between expectation and experience, between the image that had been presented for years and the reality that was now being revealed through actions and responses. And this is where Paedon's role became even more significant, because his willingness to speak openly added clarity to a situation that had previously been defined by assumptions and unspoken rules. And that clarity resonated with people because it reflected something genuine, something that did not feel rehearsed or filtered. And once that kind of authenticity enters the conversation, it changes everything, because it invites others to look more closely, to question more deeply, and to form their own conclusions based on what they see, rather than what they have been told. And this is where the momentum of the story began to accelerate, because each new development built on the last, creating a chain reaction that pushed the narrative forward in a way that could not be easily slowed down. And as this momentum increased, the reactions became stronger, the discussions became more intense, and the sense that something significant was happening became more apparent to everyone involved. And this is where Cody found himself in a position he had not anticipated, because instead of reinforcing his authority, the situation was highlighting its limitations. And that realization brought with it a level of discomfort that could not be ignored, because it required a shift in perspective, one that challenged long-held beliefs about leadership, respect, and the role he played within the family. And as this internal conflict unfolded, it began to influence his external responses, creating moments of tension that were noticeable not just within the family, but also to those observing from the outside. And this is where the narrative takes on a deeper layer.
Now intersecting with the present in ways that could not be separated or ignored. And this intersection created moments of reflection, moments where past actions were being reconsidered in light of current experiences, and where the meaning of those actions was being redefined based on what people were now seeing and feeling. And this process of reflection added another layer of complexity to the story, because it required everyone involved to confront not just what was happening now, but what had led to this point. And as those realizations continued to surface, they contributed to a growing sense that the family was moving through a transition that would have lasting effects on how relationships were understood and maintained moving forward. And this is what kept the narrative engaging, because it was not static, it was evolving, shaped by the interplay between past and present, between expectation and reality, and between the desire to hold on to what once was and the need to adapt to what is becoming. And as the story moved closer to its next turning point, the tension remained, not as a sudden conflict, but as a steady undercurrent that influenced every interaction, every decision, and every moment of connection. And just when it seemed like the situation might begin to settle into a new balance, another shift emerged, one that would further challenge the roles that had been established and push the narrative into an even more uncertain space,
leaving everyone involved to navigate a path that was still being defined and raising a question that continued to linger beneath the surface. How do you rebuild trust and understanding when the foundation they once stood on has already begun to change? And in the end, this story is not about winning or losing. It is about change and the moment everything shifts forever. If you want more powerful breakdowns like this, hit subscribe now and join the fastest growing community uncovering what really happens behind the scenes.